Hey, welcome to Kabbalah 101. We're going to be talking today about what is Kabbalah, and essentially, what is it? What is this practice? What is this study? And what is it all about? So in the last class, we talked about the lineage and the historical context of what Kabbalah is all about. The first meaning of Kabbalah means to receive, because it was actually received via this linear way in a lineage. Today we're going to be talking about what it means on a deeper level. Now, Kabbalah means to receive. Now, essentially, if we think about it, we're all receivers. When we're all receivers on a very basic level, when we take that breath of air that we're all taking, that we need to take constantly, we're receiving life. And we're constantly receiving life, and we're constantly living by what we intake. And we need to take in order to live. That's just the frailty of our humanity. Now, if we think about it on a more of a cosmic level, the small little planet Earth in the Milky Way, right, is tiny. And beyond the Milky Way, right, the entire Milky Way is tiny compared to the vastness of the universe. And I always like to take a look at the latest Hubble telescope pictures, and it's unbelievable, because you see with a little picture of the Hubble telescope, you see the incredible vastness of the universe, essentially. And when we think about it, we're so tiny in comparison to the rest of the universe, and we're really a part of this vastness of the universe, and we're receiving from this vastness of the universe. Now, on the Kabbalistic level, we know that the vastness of the universe, even the physical vastness that we see around us, is only within the realm of the created level of the world. Now, beyond that vastness, there's the spiritual level of the worlds, and specifically it goes into 4 different worlds, higher worlds. Each one is higher than the next. And beyond that, there is the infinity, which we call the Ein Sof, the infinity of God. So essentially, the human is this unbelievable receiver. Now, we're not going to go into the reason of creation, why God created the world, and what is this, the whole purpose of creation. We're going to go into that in a different class. Today we're going to talk about generally what is the practice and what is the study of Kabbalah all about. What is it supposed to enforce within the person? Why do we study it? What kind of people are we supposed to become by learning it? So now we have to know that the basic question is, why did God create the world? We're not going to go into all the levels of it, but why did God create the world? And the Zohar teaches us that God created the world in order to give us the ultimate good. Why is that? Because He is the ultimate good. God is the ultimate good, and He wants to give us the ultimate good. Now, the question is, very basic question is, well, if we look around us and we, look at the news, if we're not scared enough to turn on the news, especially nowadays, then we see the exact opposite. We see, a troubled world. We see a turbulent world. Our lives are far from perfect. Most people's lives, if people think that their lives are perfect, so then they have to check in and, well, what's going on? Are you either deluding yourself, or maybe a person is just lost it in a way? So what does it mean that God wanted to give us the ultimate good, where we actually see the opposite of that? Now, we essentially have to define, before you go any further, we have to define what good is. Now, the essence of God, as we said before, the essence of God is good. Now, Teva, the Zohar says, Teva hatov lehetiv, that the nature of good is to do good. That's the nature of good. The nature of good is to perpetuate that goodness and to try to perpetuate that goodness in creating more and more goodness. So the first question of that men really asks themselves is, first of all, well, why did God create the world? And second of all, what is my role over here in the world? And we get into essentially what we can term as the godly reality and the human reality. So we've got two realities which are going on. And according to Kabbalah, Kabbalah really spells out what the godly reality is all about. It goes, in the Zohar and the works of the Ari and all the great Kabbalists, it talks about this godly reality, discusses the infinity, discusses the worlds, discusses how God downchains himself through the worlds, the world of angels, souls, etc. So there's that reality. And the truth is that it is very far from the human reality, which is more egocentric, which is more about itself, about ourselves, where we think about ourselves. So when we think about the godly reality, so then we're like, that is extremely foreign. That is extremely not natural to really contemplate. It's not something normal that we really feel, that we see, that we taste. We look around us. We're very tangible people, very material, and what we see is what we get. And when we talk about God and we talk about spirituality, something which is beyond us, that's not something which is so natural, which is so normal in a sense for us. So there's our human reality, touch, feel, hear, see, right? All of our senses. And there's the godly reality, which is what is above us. Now, the aim of Kabbalah is to essentially merge these two worlds. It's to merge the world of the spirituality, the world of God, and the world of man. Now, how do we do that? So in order to do that, man has to make room and has to receive the godly reality. And hence we have the word Kabbalah, to receive, because ultimately we are that receiver, we are receivers, and the ultimate level of receiving is to receive that level of the godly reality and to what I call the transformation of the ego. Now, let's talk about that for a second. So, man is created as essentially a very fragile being, where we need our mother and we need our parents, and until our teenage years and beyond, right? We're very needy of others, and therefore the ego and the self is really played out within the person. So a person really just sees essentially themselves. They feel themselves. What they perceive as the truth, as reality. Their feelings, their thoughts are what is really magnified so many times within him, within us. Now, the ego is really the whole reason for our descent down into this world. Meaning, up above in the world of souls, and Kabbalah teaches us that in the world of souls, before we came down into this world, we were basking in the light of God. And we're basking in the light of just of truth, of simplicity, of reality, of just goodness. And that goodness, again, that good is something which was palpable for us. And it goes back to the question of, well, why did the soul really come down here? And what is the purpose of God in really sending it down here? And the answer is, it's that transformation of the ego. The transformation of the ego is really what it's all about. It's all essentially about working on ourselves, transforming ourselves in order to receive the godly reality, and to a little bit peek beyond our human reality, our ego-based reality, and to peer within the veils of our ego, and in order to really bask within that light once more. Now, the question is, well, what is the purpose of that descent? If it already happened, if we were already up there and we already received that ultimate good, we are already up there in the world of souls as it's described. So what is the purpose of the soul coming down into this world really once more? What is the purpose of this whole charade, right? And once again, the nature of good is to do good. Now, if we think about it, what is the ultimate good? What is the ultimate good? So if you'll ask most people in this world, they'll actually scratch their heads for quite a while, but then very shortly they'll probably tell you, to live a happy life, to live a fulfilling life, to live a content life, to live a life, where a person has all their means, have all their money, everybody's healthy, everybody's good, right? In other words, those are the basic answers for a thinking individual, right? For a non-thinking individual, they'll tell you, to eat, to eat and drink, and to be merry, and that's it, right? But for a thinking individual, they'll take them a little while, and then they'll answer. Now, the essence of good, the way Kabbalah explains it, is the essence of good is for the person to be like God, and meaning to perpetuate goodness. And just like God gives freely and is constantly giving life, we're constantly receivers of that infinite life, that infinite goodness which God gives to us every single second. And the world recreates itself every single second, and we essentially receive that goodness freely from God, right? Regardless of if a person recognizes that, doesn't recognize that, if the human reality is so opaque and so dense that they don't recognize that at all. Regardless of that, the entire human race, the entire universe, right, is receiving that life, that flow of energy, of life every single second. So God is giving, right? That's God. That's the godly reality. Is essentially the reality which God. Really, God's reality is beyond anything that we can even categorize. But God's reality, as we know it, and that's the only thing that we really have, is to really assess what we know is God doing, and God constantly doing, and God is giving. So the essence of goodness is to give, and to give without the sense of wanting something in return. Not giving something with strings attached, giving something and expecting somebody to return that favor once again to us, but to give selflessly. Now, that ability to give selflessly is the greatest godly act that we can do. Now, it's not simple at all, as you already know, because most people, in any form of giving, there's always a sense of, well, there's something there on some level which I'm expecting back, that I'm giving in order to receive. Actually, the word in Hebrew to give means natan, and that's a palindrome, because nun taf nun could be read this way or that way. And essentially we know that we do, whenever we give, we also do receive back. So that's just a reality, but on a psychological level, even a subconscious level, that's true as well. So the ultimate level is really to refine the sense of giving, meaning refining the sense of goodness that we need to have, that we need to really foster, and that we need to emulate, right? Emulating God's goodness. Now, by doing that, what exactly happens is that we actually receive the ultimate goodness, because now we are not just egocentric human, right? Just human in the sense of like just, taking and taking and taking, but now we become godly individuals, and now we are givers, just like God is the giver. And by doing that, a person actually receives, right, the ultimate level of goodness. So now we're using a lot of receiving and giving and receiving and giving. And so let's define this a little further. So in order for anybody, right, to give, they actually need to receive. God is the only one that doesn't need to receive, because he's the ultimate giver. And that's what we're aspiring for, but essentially we can never reach that because we need to receive. It's impossible for us to be ultimate givers, because whatever we have, we receive it from somewhere. So we have to take in, we know we have to take into account that we are human and we are receivers, right? But we refine our sense of receiving. We refine ourselves of receiving, of Kabbalah, of how we receive. Now, in order to receive, a person needs to know what are they doing with it. Why are they receiving? Why are they getting anything that they're getting, right? So if a person is going to work, right? He's there to work. Is he there to get rich? Is he there to buy himself a new sports car? Is he there to support his family? Is he there to go on vacation? There to buy clothing for himself? All those things may be true. However, the deepest level, if a person really analyzes it, a person goes to work and a person receives the money that they receive in order to really have life, in order to live. Why? Because the basic needs are to eat and to have shelter, right? And to have clothing, etc. Now, if a person would go a little further and ask themselves, well, what is the purpose of life? And why is a person alive? Why does a person need to eat? So now that goes into that awakens or should awake within a person. Well, why am I alive? That's a very good question. What is the ultimate purpose of why I'm here, of why I'm alive? And by defining those goals, whatever those goals are, those are the goals of one's life, then that is really the deepest level of why a person goes to work. A majority of people don't know, right, why they're actually going to work and what they're actually doing. I mean, they suffice with the external levels. Now, Kabbalah wants to take this a step further. In every action, whatever a person does, in every specific part of one's day and one's mind frame, one's consciousness, a person is thinking about the deepest aspect of what it is that they're actually doing and why they're doing it. So if it's going to work, I'm alive and I need to have money in order to live. What is the purpose of that? So if a person's inner purpose is, once again, is to emulate God, and the essence of good is to give, so then a person realizes, well, I'm there in order to be alive. And why am I alive? To serve humanity, to serve others, to perpetuate that goodness in whatever form, whatever shape, whatever way a person is able to do, and whatever each person's role is. But that is really the deepest aspect of why a person is alive. Now, to get to that point is not so simple, like we said earlier, because there's that egocentric reality, and there's all of those other reasons, those external reasons, which tell me I need to go to work in order to buy the new sports car, or I need to go to work in order to show off my new house, or to buy myself a new gold watch and whatnot. Not that those things are not good, right? But why is a person doing it? Why is a person getting it? right? If a person is stuck in that reality of needing to get those things and wanting to get those things for themselves, so then that is something which is already external. That is already something which we call klipa. It's already something which is outside. It's not the ultimate highest purpose of receiving that good. So that refinement of receiving, that refinement of why a person is doing it, and how to best do it, that is the aim of Kabbalah. The aim of Kabbalah is really to teach us this godly reality. It talks about the godly reality, and it talks about all these worlds, and it talks about definitions within those worlds, and it goes into specifics of all those things. So then a person now infuses their consciousness with that higher reality. So now they are receiving, they're merging with that higher reality, and now their egocentric reality, their selfish self, is now infused with this essence, with this higher reality, which is God's godly reality. And by doing that, a person now merges their intellect and their heart, which are, which are material. A person's mind is intellectual, but it's a physical brain. The heart is the physical heart, right? And now a person hones them and kind of like thinks and feels based on and transforms their egocentric self and their need to receive for themselves. So now that we talked about that first stage of now the receiving aspect, now a person recognizes that they're a receiver, why they're receiving, what it is that they're receiving, and everything that they're doing is they're receiving from that infinity, from that God's infinity. Even going to work and receiving money, that comes through a channel, a spiritual channel, which goes all the way down to the boss giving me the paycheck and whatnot. So now a person recognizes why they're receiving. Now the next part is now they are in service. Now they're giving. Now they are like God. The essence of God is good and to give. Now a person is giving. Now that level of giving is it needs to be worked on, because like we said before, a person's giving is still could still be with the ulterior motive of wanting to receive something in return. In order to properly give and to order to properly have that selfless sense, that takes years and years of personal refinement, of spiritual refinement, of giving selflessly, and giving almost like being this channel of godliness, and being this link of godliness for others, right? Being there for others and presenting yourself to others, being of service to people in need, whether it's in the form of charity, whether it's in the form of volunteering, whether in service of giving a smile to somebody, whether looking somebody in the eye, whether acknowledging acknowledging somebody in the street, or it's even on a deeper level. It's really just constantly being in a state of the right. In the right state of mind in whatever we do and wherever we are. If it's looking at a flower, if it's being online in the grocery store, we are actually receiving and we're actually giving at the same time by actually being this godly participant of this universe and being a godly participant within the world. Now, we have a mitzvah, and Rabbi Akiva calls it the greatest mitzvah. The entire Torah is actually based on this mitzvah. Love your friend as you love yourself. Rabbi Akiva says that this is the entire Torah. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your friend as you love yourself. This is the whole Torah. Now, the question is, like, what does that mean if that is the whole Torah? That one mitzvah, there's 613 mitzvot in the Torah. You say that this one mitzvah, that's the entire, that really captures the entire Torah. What is it about this mitzvah that really captures this essence, right, of the Torah, that expression of the Torah, the godly expression? The Torah is we received on Mount Sinai. So what is it about it? And the answer is that mitzvah of loving your friend like you as you love yourself is really this secret. It's really this dynamic, this constant dynamic that we have of how do we give to others and how do we receive for ourselves? How do we receive for ourselves in order to give to others? That dynamic reality is something that we're faced with when we have an other. That you should love your friend as you love yourself. Do you love your friend as you love yourself? And that's a question which, normally a person does not. Look at yourself in the mirror and you'll be very honest. You don't love anybody as much as you love yourself, and it's healthy to be that way. A person needs to keep that sense of self, yes, but how does the self actually differentiate from the ego part, which is selfish, in order to transform that selfishness and that ego-ness, right, in order to give properly? And that is this whole dynamic of when we see somebody else and we give to the other, and we recognize that the other is actually myself. He and me. I'm of service to him or to her, and by being there for him or for her, I'm actually accomplishing the entire Torah. That's what the entire Torah is essentially all about. And all of the other mitzvot, all the other 612 mitzvot are all about this fixings. They're all about the different components of how to reach that level. They're spiritual connections that allow us to reach that level of giving really selflessly on the highest level, on the godly level. And that's what happens, when we give, and we give, ultimately we receive in order to give. Then we actually accomplish this entire reason for creation, because at that point of giving, of being a giver and transforming oneself, a person actually receives more and more. Person is able to give more and more once they've made themselves this receiver, this vessel of proper receiving. And this process of honing and refining one's, what we call vessel, one's self, one's ego, transformation of that, then a person is able to have a greater vessel. And once that vessel is refined, then the person's vessels get bigger. They're able to receive more and more and more. And the ultimate purpose is that we should receive as much as we're able to, as much as we can, and to receive that ultimate good by virtue of our own work, of our own efforts in it. Because if the effort was, if God would just give us, that ultimate good, then we would always feel a sense of shame. The Zohar says that it's called the bread of shame. We would feel, when we receive something, we feel a little bit shameful when we receive something for no reason. But when we work at it, when we do something and we actually refine our vessel, so then, we know that we're not just receiving this for no reason. It's because we worked on ourselves. That's why we received it. And that's what God really wants to do. He wants to give us more and more. He wants to give us the ultimate. He wants to give us the greatest abundance possible, physical abundance and spiritual abundance, right? All for the purpose of now of perpetuating that, of giving that, of being that receptacle for others, and thereby receiving more and more and more. And we know actually that the word for in English for another word for money is currency, because because it's actually current. It's actually something which is really flowing, and this flow of energy, this flow of divine energy, is something which is dynamic, something which really constantly should flow. It shouldn't stop and be taken in and received for one's self. But when it's dynamic, when it flows, so then it actually expands and becomes greater and greater and greater. So through the work of learning and refining of the self and going into the details of Kabbalah, then one really expands one's vessels and works on themselves and refines themselves, and thereby is able to receive the infinite blessings and the infinite good of God. So wishing you a great day, and hopefully we'll go through this together, and we're able to receive the ultimate good and perpetuate that and give that to others.